Moss. Ethan Caldwell rolled down his window, letting the damp air in. It carried the scent of rain-soaked bark and something else, mud and rust and memory. His rental truck bumped over a patch of cracked asphalt. The GPS on the dashboard flickered, then lost signal. For a moment, all he heard was the low hum of the engine and the distant sound of the river that had given this place its name, the Sable. He remembered the project memo. Blackthorn Solutions, Phase 3 Site Assessment. Hydroelectric Feasibility Survey, Sable River, Oregon. He hated how clean it sounded. The memo didn't mention what he was really there to do, confirm that no significant cultural artifacts existed in the construction zone, so the company could proceed without legal obstruction. In other words, make history disappear. Ethan parked beside an abandoned gas station at the town's edge. A row of faded protest signs leaned against its wall. Keep our river free, Willow Creek lives on. The paint was cracked by sun and neglect, yet the message still bit through the years. He stepped out, stretching his legs. His reflection glimmered faintly in the truck's side. Dug up from some forgotten ruin, the diner across the street was the only place open. Its sign buzzed weakly, Millie's Diner and Gas, EST 1948. A bell jingled as he entered. The smell of coffee and fried onions wrapped around him. A few locals sat at the counter, their conversation flattening into silence the moment he appeared. The waitress, gray hair pulled back, cigarette parked behind her ear, looked him over. You're not from around here. Ethan smiled awkwardly. That obvious? You've got the look of someone following orders, she said, pouring him coffee without asking. Let me guess. Blackthorn. He hesitated. The name still made his stomach tighten. Environmental assessment, he said carefully. That what they're calling it now? She slid the cup toward him. You'll find the site down by the old slab. Follow the dirt road past the mill. Not that anyone be happy to see you there. A man at the counter, a bearded logger in a flannel jacket, snorted. Ain't the first time some outsider came here to dig up ghosts. Ethan forced a thin smile. I'm just here to do my job. Sure, the man muttered. That's what the last one said. The waitress shot him a look, but the damage was done. Ethan's pulse quickened. The last one? She shrugged, pretending to wipe the counter. Student. College kid from Portland. Jacob Hensley. I think. Poked around the river last summer. Said he found something under the water. Couple weeks later, he packed up and left in a hurry. Folks say he got scared off. Scared of what? Her gaze drifted toward the fogged window. The Sable doesn't like to be disturbed. Ethan didn't answer. Outside, mist pressed against the glass, turning the street into a blurred painting of gray and green. He drained his coffee and left a few bills on the counter. As he reached the door, the waitress called after him. Hey! Don't stay out there after dark. You hear things by the river. That ain't the wind. The dirt road snaked downward through a forest that seemed to swallow the daylight. By the time Ethan reached the clearing near the Sable, afternoon had faded into that bruised hour before dusk. He parked beside a half-collapsed sawmill and killed the engine. The silence that followed was enormous. A single crow perched on the rusted roof, watching him. He thought about the protest signs, the townspeople's stares. This job was supposed to be routine. 2 days of soil sampling, a drone survey, then a report stating no historical significance. Yet the air itself resisted him here, as if the forest had been waiting a long time to be left alone. He unpacked his tent and equipment, tripod scanner, core sampler, notebook. A dull ache pulsed behind his right temple, a familiar tension from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. He set up camp a few meters from the riverbank, where the mud gave way to stone. And there it was, the slab. A stretch of granite, pale and smooth, jutting out from the river's edge like a wound scarred over. Strange circular etchings marred its surface, half eroded, half deliberate. The locals called it the slab of the forgotten. Ethan crouched beside it, brushing away a layer of moss. The symbols reminded him faintly of 19th century mill marks, but they didn't match any pattern he knew. In the fading light, and cursed softly. The Oregon humidity clung to his skin, thick as breath. The forest around him creaked and settled. Then he heard it, faint at first, like someone whispering just out of reach. A phrase repeated over the rustle of leaves. He turned, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. Just the wind, he told himself, though the words came out hollow. The whisper came again, closer. Now, threading through the murmur of the river. It sounded like his name. Ethan. He froze. For a long moment, he stood still, every nerve awake. Then he shook his head, forcing a laugh. Sleep deprivation. That's all. He returned to his tent, zipped it halfway, and scribbled a note. Acoustic illusion, possible wind resonance through tree line. Record samples tomorrow. Still. As he lay down, the sound lingered in his head. By midnight, fog rolled in from the river, swallowing the camp in silver murk. Ethan's sleep was shallow, splintered by the chirr of insects and the distant groan of shifting water. In one dream, he was walking along the slab under a crimson sky. The granite bled through cracks, and a voice murmured from below, "We never left." He woke with a 3:12 a.m. Outside, the fog was thick enough to taste. The river whispered again, softer this time, like breathing. He limped to the edge of the water. Something glimmered beneath the surface, a faint orange pulse, rhythmic, like the glow of a lantern deep below. He knelt, squinting. The shape moved, drifting closer, curved metal, barnacled wood, the hint of a name carved into its side. Aurora. The word cut through him like a blade of ice. He blinked, and the light was gone. Only his reflection stared back, distorted by ripples. He stumbled backward, heart pounding. "It's not real," he whispered. "Just refraction. Just light." A splash answered him from mid-river. He turned sharply, but saw only fog. Back inside the tent, he zipped the entrance tight and sat in the dark, listening to his own breathing. He remembered the waitress's words, "Don't stay out there after dark." Too late now. He reached for his field journal, forcing his thoughts into words. Wavered, forming a curve he didn't intend. He stared. It wasn't random. It was one of the same symbols carved into the slab. His hand trembled. The lantern guttered out. Dawn found him sitting outside the tent, staring at the river. His notebook lay open beside him, the page smeared where he tried to erase the mark. The air was cold and bright, heavy with dew. He tried to rationalize. Fatigue, isolation, subconscious pattern recognition. He'd seen too many expedition sites where paranoia bloomed like mold. But deep down, something had shifted. The forest no longer felt indifferent, it felt watchful. He splashed cold water on his face, packed his bag, and muttered to no one. Day 2. Sample collection. Keep moving. Yet as he turned toward the slab, the wind rose. Return. Ethan awoke to the smell of smoke. For a few seconds, he couldn't tell if he was still dreaming. Pale morning light filtered through the tent, turning the canvas into a dim amber shell. The smoke came from the river, thin gray ribbons rising above the fog. He crawled out, wincing as his ankle flared with pain, and froze. Someone had been there. Footprints, small, barefoot, pressed into the mud near the slab. They led down to the water's edge and vanished into the current. The prints were fresh, edges still glistening. The nearest town was miles away. He glanced toward the trees. Nothing but mist and moss. The forest was silent, as if holding its breath. He swallowed hard and knelt by the granite surface. The etchings he'd cleaned the day before had deepened. Early settler markings? No, too precise. He turned back to the tent. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of river water. A damp sheet of paper clung to the floor, his field note from last night, warped and nearly translucent. The words had bled away, leaving only one phrase still legible. Aurora sleeps beneath. Do not wake her. Ethan felt a pulse in his throat. Who wrote this? He whispered. But even as he said it, he knew the handwriting. It was his own. That evening the temperature dropped. The sky pressed low, thick with cloud. Ethan spent the day collecting sediment samples and running his drone survey, trying to lose himself in routine. The drone's camera caught little, just murky outlines under the river surface, but the last feed, before the battery died, showed a flash of metallic curvature, almost like a ship's hull. When he downloaded the data, the screen glitched. For a single frame, the feed showed something impossible, a man in the 19th century. He shut the laptop, heart racing. Compression artifact, he muttered. Just an artifact. But the word artifact didn't sound scientific anymore. It sounded like a warning. That night, he dreamed again. He was walking through fog that glowed faintly red, as if lit by coals beneath the ground. The trees around him were gone. In their place stood wooden cabins, roofs sagging, windows dark. Lanterns swung from doorposts, throwing halos of light through drifting ash. A sign above the main path read, Raven's Hollow, EST 1847. The air tasted of smoke and salt. Men and women in frontier clothing stood in a ring, their faces gray with soot. At the center burned a massive ship, tethered to the shore. Flames climbed its masts, painting the sky orange. The name on the bow was unmistakable, Aurora. Stop! Ethan shouted, though he didn't know why. No one turned. The crowd chanted low and rhythmic, their words lost beneath the crackling wood. The river bubbled as the hull groaned and split. A thick, black vapor rose from the ship's hold, swirling like smoke made of oil. Then he saw him, a tall man in a dark coat, standing apart from the crowd. His face was gaunt, eyes sunk deep, and in his hand he held a leather doctor's bag. He turned as if hearing Ethan's voice. Too late, the man said softly. You've already opened it. Ethan stepped closer. Who are you? The man tilted his head. Dr. Amos Blackwood. You shouldn't be here, Mr. Caldwell. Ethan's breath caught. How do you know my name? Blackwood opened his bag. Inside were glass vials filled with swirling liquid, each one glowing faintly green. The sickness began with curiosity, he said, and ends with silence. You must leave before the river remembers you. The flames flared brighter, consuming the Aurora. From within the ship came screams, not human, not entirely. Something writhed in the fire, a mass of movement too quick to see. The villagers backed away in terror as the smoke thickened, pouring over them like a tide. Ethan stumbled back. What is that? The curse we tried to drown, Blackwood said. But rivers do not forget. The smoke reached him then, stinging his eyes. He coughed, choking on the metallic taste. Through the haze, a woman appeared, a young mother holding a child wrapped in cloth. Ethan stared at her. Who are you? Mary, she whispered. Mary Hale. The sickness is in his blood. In all of us. She held out her child, but when Ethan looked, the bundle was empty. Only dark water dripped from the folds of fabric. Her face twisted, voice deepening. You can't save what the river owns. The fire roared. The sky cracked open, spilling black rain. The villagers screamed as the smoke devoured them one by one, their shapes dissolving into the mist. And then the child screamed, a sound so sharp it shattered the dream. Ethan jolted awake, gasping. His tent was gone. He was lying on the wet ground, rain pouring over him. The campfire had burned to ash. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. Then the flash of lightning showed the. He turned. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, coat flapping in the wind. The lantern in his hand burned with that same unnatural green. Dr. Blackwood. Ethan's mind reeled. You're not real! The figure tilted his head. Neither is memory, yet it shapes everything you do. Lightning struck again, and Blackwood was gone. Only the lantern remained, resting upright in the mud. Inside, the flame flickered once, then went out. Ethan approached cautiously. The lantern was old brass darkened with age. He crouched and lifted it. The metal was cold. Inside was no wick, only a glass vial half filled with a viscous, luminous liquid. It pulsed faintly, alive. He sealed it in a sample jar, his rational mind taking over. Analyze later, he muttered. Document. Verify, explain. But as he spoke, the vial inside the lantern shuddered, once, then twice, and went still. A thin crack spidered across the glass. A single drop leaked out and touched his wrist. The pain was immediate, searing, icy. He wiped it away instinctively, but the skin beneath had already gone pale and cold. Tiny black veins spread from the spot, disappearing up his sleeve. He stumbled back, breathing hard. No, chemical reaction. Just chemical. The whisper from the forest cut him off. Ethan. He spun around. Through the sheets of rain, the silhouettes of people emerged from the trees, men, women, children, all gray and flickering like projections on smoke. Their faces were the same ones from the dream. The villagers of Raven's Hollow. Stay back! He shouted. You're not real. They didn't move closer, but their eyes glowed faintly yellow, reflecting the lightning. One of them, a woman with a burned shawl, raised her hand and pointed toward the river. Ethan followed her gaze. The current surged violently, churning black. For a split second, he saw it again, the outline of a ship beneath the surface, the Aurora, hull blazing even. Underwater. The ground trembled. His instruments toppled. Water surged over the slab, washing away the dirt. When it receded, new markings had appeared, an entire ring of runes forming a circle. Deceptively ordinary. Ethan sat on the slab, staring at the lantern. His wrist still ached faintly, the skin around it pale and tender. He recorded a message into his audio log. Day 3. 0600 hours. Severe storm overnight. Possible landslide upstream. Unexplained light phenomena. Found lantern containing unknown phosphorescent liquid. Sample stored. Experiencing vivid dreams involving 19th century settlement, fire, epidemic. I believe the site may overlay the ruins of Raven's Hollow, presumed lost 1870s. He hesitated before adding the final note. Recommend temporary suspension of Blackthorn project pending further verification. He stopped the recorder and looked toward the river. For the first time in years, he didn't care what the company thought. Hale's voice. You woke her, Ethan. Now she remembers your name. He closed his eyes. The river whispered back. And this time, he didn't deny that it was speaking. Ethan hadn't slept for more. Caught like a patient animal, the cracked glass inside it glowing faintly no matter how tightly he sealed it. By the third morning, the fog refused to lift. The forest remained hushed. He couldn't leave. Something in him needed to know what lay beneath the water, to prove that what he saw wasn't madness. Or if it was, to map its shape. The Blackthorn field drone hovered above the Sable River, its propellers slicing the mist. Ethan guided it with numb precision, watching the feed on his tablet. The sonar returned jagged outlines, irregular shadows beneath the current. Then, at 8 meters deep, the image sharpened. A hull. Wooden. Intact. He increased the contrast. The nameplate gleamed faintly in the light. Aurora. Ethan exhaled, trembling. It's real. He whispered. It's actually real. He saved the coordinates, then set up the ROV unit, a small, tethered robot meant for environmental sampling. The machine whirred to life, its headlights cutting through the murk. As it descended, the current carried silt like drifting ghosts. The first thing it found was the bow, blackened by fire, still whole. The planks were scarred with strange carvings, patterns spiraling inward like whirlpools. The deeper it went, the darker the water became, until the light picked up something reflective, rows of glass bottles embedded in the hull, sealed tight with wax. Ethan leaned closer to the screen. "What the hell is that?" Inside each bottle floated a dark substance that shifted with the current. For a moment he thought it was sediment, until one of them twitched. He jerked back. "No, that's not possible." The ROV feed flickered. A burst of interference blurred the screen, and a new shape appeared, a face pressed against the glass, pale, eyeless, mouth open in a silent scream. Ethan ripped off the headset, breathing hard. The feed returned to normal, empty riverbed. He forced a laugh that sounded like a cough. "Optical illusion," parried Aaliyah. But when he looked at his own reflection in the black tablet screen, the eyes staring back were rimmed with yellow. By dusk, he'd moved to the cabin near the old mill, a structure Blackthorn used as a base station. Dust coated everything. He powered the generator and began reviewing data. That was when he found the folder labeled Hensley Field Notes. Inside were scanned pages from Jacob Hensley's logbook, the student who'd come before him. The first entry was neat academic. June 18th. Initial survey successful. Possible remains of 19th century river vessel. Local sources refer to the Aurora, a trading barge sunk under mysterious circumstances. Coordinates logged. Will return after permit confirmation. The next entries were Shakier, June 23rd. The townsfolk won't speak of it. They avoid the river after sundown. One old man muttered, "The doctor's curse." I think he meant Dr. Amos Blackwood. Why does that name sound familiar? And finally, June 26th. I shouldn't have gone back alone. The water. It wasn't water anymore. It moved uphill. Something inside the wreck moved. It whispered my name. Leaving tomorrow. If anyone finds this, don't dig. Don't wake her. Ethan sat back, skin prickling. The handwriting at the end trembled, trailing off mid-sentence. The timestamp matched the week Jacob disappeared from Willow Creek. He opened his field recorder and began to dictate. Recovered digital scans from Jacob Hensley, Portland University. Notes corroborate possible connection to historical Ravens Hollow. Incident. Multiple references to Dr. Amos Blackwood, possibly the same figure from local folklore. His voice shook slightly, but he kept going. Personal note, I've begun experiencing mild fever. And ocular irritation. Likely exposure to contaminants in the river. He stopped. Looked down. A dark smear marked the back of his hand, the same vein pattern spreading outward from the spot where the drop had touched him. He pressed a thumb to it. It pulsed beneath the skin. That night, the fever broke through his restraint. He woke to the sound of dripping. At first he thought it was the roof leaking, until he saw the puddle spreading from beneath the lantern. The vial inside was cracked wider, black fluid oozing out in tiny rivulets. When he stepped closer, the puddle rippled outward, forming a perfect circle around his boots. In its reflection, he saw not his face, but the river, endless and dark, stretching into an impossible horizon. He tried to move but couldn't. His muscles locked. The air grew thick with the scent of rot and salt. Then, from that reflection, shapes began to rise, figures of water and ash, faces from his dream. Mary Hale stepped forward. Her features half dissolved. It spreads through the blood, she said. That's how it remembers. Ethan forced out words through a dry throat. What do you want from me? To finish what the doctor began, she whispered, to erase the shadow he left. Behind her, Dr. Blackwood appeared, eyes like burned coal. The curse was containment, not cruelty. We drowned ourselves to bury it. And now you've dredged it back to light. Ethan stumbled backward. I can fix this. I can. Blackwood's hand shot out, gripping his wrist, the same one marked by the drop. His touch was ice. You can't erase what you carry. Ethan gasped as pain flared through his veins, a wildfire spreading under his skin. The world tilted. His knees buckled. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying on the cabin floor. Dawn light seeped through the cracks. The lantern was shattered. The puddle was gone. But carved into the wood beneath him were words, not burned, not inked, but etched from the inside of the floorboards outward. She rises when the river falls. He staggered to his feet, barely steady. His reflection in the dusty window showed a stranger, skin grayish, veins dark. His eyes shimmered gold at the edges. He didn't have time to process. He had to act. He packed what gear still worked, camera, recorder, Jacob's files. Then he drove. The fog was thick, but not empty anymore. Shapes flickered in the corners of his vision, walking just beyond the tree line. The radio sputtered static, and beneath it, faint whispers repeated his own name. He stopped at the bridge overlooking the Sable. The water level had dropped a full meter since yesterday, exposing the upper curve of the Aurora's hull. The storm must have shifted the current. He could see it now with his own eyes. Burned wood, skeletal beams, the ship's spine arching from the river like the back of something alive. Ethan grabbed his camera and limped down the embankment. Every rational thought screamed to leave, but he couldn't. This was proof, of history, of himself, of something more than fear. The air grew cold. The surface of the water rippled, though there was no wind. As he approached the exposed hull, his breath came out in white clouds. The carvings were clearer now, spirals meeting in a central point, forming an emblem like an open. The latch clicked open. The hollow beneath released a burst of air, old and damp, carrying the scent of formaldehyde and decay. Inside was a wooden box, sealed with wax and stamped with a symbol. The same circle of runes from the slab. He lifted it free, water cascading off its sides. The instant it broke the surface, the river roared as if enraged. The current surged against his legs, nearly toppling him. He staggered back to shore, clutching the box. The wind screamed through the trees. From the woods came the faint toll of a bell, 1, 2, 3. He fell to his knees, coughing. A thin stream of black water dripped from his lips. When he wiped his mouth, his hand came away red and dark. His reflection in the box's wet surface stared back, eyes now completely gold, pupils narrowed like a predator's. Somewhere in the distance, the whisper became words. You opened the vessel. The river remembers. He dropped the box. It hit the mud with a hollow sound. Cracks spidered across its surface. Something inside moved, slow and deliberate, like something breathing after a long sleep. That night, Ethan sat in the cab of his truck, engine off, headlights cutting through the fog. His hands shook around the steering wheel. The fever came in waves now, burning from within. He replayed the drone footage, the ROV scan, Jacob's last note. Over and over. He knew what Blackthorn would do if he sent the report. Bury it, build over it, erase the evidence like always. But this wasn't just evidence. It was warning. He began typing his own message, voice raw and trembling. To whoever finds this log, don't come to Willow Creek. Don't disturb the Aurora. The curse is real. It's not metaphor, not superstition. It's infection. Consciousness. Something ancient and alive in the water. I'm leaving. If I can. He paused, staring at the glowing screen. His reflection looked back from the dark windshield, and behind it, just barely visible, the faint outline of a woman's face. Wet hair. Hollow eyes. Mary Hale. She smiled faintly and whispered, You're already part of her. The laptop screen went black. Outside, the river began to rise again. Rain returned at dusk, soft at first, then relentless. Ethan's truck crawled along the flooded road that wound out of Willow Creek, tires hissing through the waterlogged gravel. Headlights cut cones of pale light through the fog, revealing only fragments of the forest ahead, branches bending, leaves trembling, something always moving just beyond the beam. He'd left the cabin an hour ago. The shattered box from the Aurora lay buried under the mud behind him, or so he hoped. But even as he drove, he could feel its echo, a low pressure behind his ribs, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. The infection had spread. His veins looked like thin cracks of ink. The fever shimmered at the edges of his vision, painting everything with a faint gold haze. He whispered to the empty cab, as if confessing, "Just a fever. Just exhaustion." But the air around him stirred when he spoke, answering with a whisper of its own. "You opened her." He turned up the radio. Static filled the silence. Beneath it, voices flickered, fragments of old broadcasts, church hymns, and something else that sounded like breathing. He shut it off. The fog pressed closer, swallowing the road. The town's last street light appeared in the mirror behind him, a distant, dying glow. Beyond it stretched only the highway and the endless dark of the forest. Halfway across the bridge over the Sable, he stopped. The river below surged black and fast, swollen from the rain. In the glare of his headlights, he saw the water moving upstream. Not in waves, rising. Ethan gripped the wheel tighter. His reflection on the windshield looked wrong now, skin gray, eyes luminous. His mouth trembled, whispering without sound. He shut his eyes and counted his breaths. 1, 2, 3. When he opened them again, someone stood in the middle of the bridge. A man in a long, dark coat, hat brim dripping with rain. Dr. Amos Blackwood. "Legs. Get out of my way," he shouted. Blackwood's voice carried effortlessly through the storm. "You cannot drive away from what you've become. I'm not part of this. You are the vessel now," Blackwood said. "The river chose you when you broke the seal." Ethan shook his head, the fever bright behind his eyes. "You're dead. You've been dead a century. Death is only the quiet part of memory," the doctor said. "The rest flows forever." Lightning tore open the sky. For a heartbeat the bridge was daylight, and in that light Ethan saw hundreds of figures standing along the guardrails, the lost villagers of Raven's Hollow, pale and motionless, rain streaming through them like smoke through glass. Mary Hale stood among them, clutching her empty bundle. Her eyes met his, soft, pleading, inhuman. "You can end it," she said. "Let it go back." The roar of the river rose beneath them. Ethan realized the water wasn't climbing anymore, it was breathing. Expanding and contracting like lungs. Every exhale shook the bridge. He stumbled toward the railing, shouting above the thunder. "What do you want me to do?" Blackwood lifted the lantern. Its flame flared brighter, illuminating the cracked vial inside. "Return the heart of the Aurora. Return what was stolen." Ethan blinked through the rain. "The box?" "The heart," Mary repeated. "You carry it still." He looked down at his hands, and saw faint light pulsing through the veins of his wrists, the same sickly glow from the lantern's fluid. It was inside him now. He backed away, terrified. "How do I give it back?" But Blackwood was fading, dissolving into mist. "The river takes what it's owed." The bridge shook violently. One of the support beams cracked with a groan like thunder. Ethan turned, ran back to the truck, and gunned the engine. Tires screeched as the bridge began to buckle behind him. The villagers' voices rose in a single wail, ancient, wordless, mourning. He didn't look back. The road wound downhill into the valley. Willow Creek's lights flickered once, then died completely as the storm killed the power grid. Ethan drove until the fuel gauge screamed empty, then coasted into the parking lot of an old gas station, the same one he'd seen his first day here. The sign still buzzed faintly, Millie's Diner and Gas, EST 1948. He stepped out. Rain hammering the pavement. The diner windows were dark, reflections warped by water. For a moment he saw movement inside, a shadow crossing between tables, but when he opened the door, the place was empty. Only the faint smell of coffee lingered, stale and cold. He sat at the counter where he'd once met the waitress. The seat was damp with condensation. He touched his forehead. "It's over." The reflection smiled when he didn't. He froze. His own mouth stayed still, but the image moved, lips curling upward. The mirrored version of himself whispered, "The river doesn't end here." Ethan staggered back, knocking over a chair. The lights above flickered on for the first time since he'd entered, bathing the diner in sickly yellow glow. The reflection behind the counter multiplied, dozens of faces now, all him, all smiling. From the kitchen doorway came a child's laugh, thin, watery, wrong. Ethan turned and fled. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. The world looked washed clean, too clean. He climbed into his truck and started the engine. The dashboard lights flickered weakly. He drove. The tires hissed against the slick road as the forest thinned into open highway. The horizon glowed faintly ahead, a promise of dawn. For the first time, he let himself believe he might actually make it out. At the edge of town, he stopped at a gas pump beneath a flickering canopy. He stepped out, stretching stiff muscles. The air was cool and smelled of pine. Somewhere behind him, the river murmured like a sleeping animal. He caught his reflection in the side mirror, eyes yellow but human again, almost normal. He exhaled shakily. "You did it," he told himself. "You made it out." He pumped gas, staring blankly at the numbers climbing on the meter. The rhythmic click was hypnotic. His mind drifted. He thought about Portland, about the university, about the articles he never published. About how, maybe, he'd go back and tell the truth this time. When the pump clicked off, he replaced the nozzle, got back in, and turned the key. The truck rumbled to life. He glanced once more at the mirror before pulling out. And froze. Someone was sitting in the back seat. The figure was half visible in the dim interior light. Long hair plastered to her face, dress soaked, eyes hollow but smiling. Mary Hale. The fabric in her arms moved as if something inside it breathed. Ethan couldn't move. His throat locked. The temperature in the cab dropped until his breath fogged the glass. Mary leaned forward slowly, her voice a whisper against his ear. "You can't erase the river's curse." Her reflection in the windshield shimmered, and in that reflection, Ethan saw the highway ahead transform into a vast black current, stretching endlessly forward. The headlights became the glow of lanterns floating downstream. He screamed and slammed his foot on the accelerator. The truck lurched forward into the fog. The road vanished beneath him. Water swallowed the tires, then the doors. The engine sputtered, drowned. Through the windshield, he saw the Aurora beneath the surface again, burning silently. Eternal. The villagers stood upon its deck waiting. Mary turned to face him fully now, her eyes twin mirrors of gold. "Welcome home," she said. The river closed over him. At sunrise, the rain stopped. The road over the Sable River was gone, bridge collapsed, asphalt torn away. Pieces of wreckage floated among the debris, half submerged in the still water. Authorities would later report that the floodwaters had swept away a vehicle matching Ethan Caldwell's rental truck. His laptop and field gear were never found, only a cracked audio recorder recovered downstream. The final entry on it was faint, nearly drowned by static. "Not dead, not gone, the river remembers." Weeks later, the Blackthorn Solutions office in Portland received an anonymous parcel. No return address. Inside was a waterproof drive containing Ethan's report, unfinished. The attached note read simply, "Suspend the project. She's awake." The executives archived it under unverified environmental hazards and moved on. A month after that, the Sable River was officially declared safe for development. But locals still say that when the fog rolls in heavy and the water turns black, you can hear an engine idling somewhere beneath the bridge that isn't there anymore, and if you look long enough into the river, you'll see headlights moving slowly through the current. Sometimes, they say, a woman sits in the back seat, smiling.